ladies and gentlemen, Ronald Ray here, your boy with a cornbread accent. Welcome you to this episode of Classic Wrestling Reminiscing. And this edition of Classic Wrestling Reminiscing, I will be doing a recap of the Vice Series Tales of the Territory, the episode in particular, Carolinas, the Heels of the Carolinas, which, of course, talks about the Jim Crockett promotions. Now, just not to digress too much, for me, this was the territory that got me hooked on professional wrestling. Uh, we, we as in mom, dad, younger sister, lived in a small town called Maysville, Georgia. I don't even think it's on the Georgia map, much less the United States map. No cable television, just an antenna on the roof. Uh, I know you kids out there don't know what antenna on the roof is, or what an antenna is, or even the rabbit ears, or what we call rabbit ears, the antenna in the back of the TV. Anyway, I did get to see WWF, which, of course, only being only having an antenna, of course, you only got the three stations: ABC, NBC, and CBS. So I got to see WWF. Sparked my interest. It's like, oh, there's some theatrics here, and it kind of, just like, not to digress too much, but just like any kind of fandom anybody gets into, either a bad day or something happens, you watch something and it instantly kind of just clears your mind and puts you in a nice, relaxing place. That's what professional wrestling was to me as a kid. Anyway, I digress again. Let's get back to my little story. Anyway, so I know who Hulk Hogan was, and like I said, there's some names I did remember from when I was younger, like 6 years ago. Roddy Piper, Junkyard Dog, and the WWF. But I was talking to friends, playing on the playground or whatever, and they were talking about the Rock and Roll Express, Random TA, Midnight Express, Dusty Rhodes, which Dusty Rhodes, that was a name I remembered as well. And of course, I was like, what's this Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express? Which, they explained, it's like, oh, they're wrestlers. I was like, oh, wrestlers like Hulk Hogan. And you could hear a pin drop. Uh, did I mention this was in Georgia? So, me saying wrestlers like Hulk Hogan was equivalent to being around Star Wars fans, and they're telling me who Han Solo and Luke Skywalker is. And I say, who are they? And they say, hey, they're characters in a sci-fi movie called Star Wars. And I sit there and go, oh, sci-fi like Star Trek, Spock, Captain Kirk? Yeah. And you understand what I'm saying when I say that, give that Star Wars, Star Trek relevance. So anyway, they say, hey, check it out. It comes on this time on Saturday. I just missed it long ago. Check it out. Trust me, you're gonna like it. So we picked up a channel where we lived at. We picked up a Channel 4 out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was Channel 4. It was an NBC affiliate, and they showed NWA Pro. And I watched the episode. They showed highlights to the I Quit match between Madam TA and Tully Blanchard, and right there, I was hooked. They got me. And to this day, I'm a fan. So I became a huge fan of, of course, Madam TA and Midnight Express, Ron Garvin. Oh my gosh, that dude! I felt like watching it now. I feel sorry for all those Hampton times back in the day. Also, where we lived at, we picked up another independent channel, NBC, or not NBC, but another North Carolina channel, 21. They show another Crockett program, Worldwide Wrestling, so I got to watch that. Of course, still watch WWF. Then I discovered, Jim Crockett Promotions had a show on WTBS. My dad got antenna booster, so we can somewhat pick up. It sometimes be foggy, sometimes be clear. Anyways, antenna booster, got to see WTBS, or World Championship Wrestling, brought to you by the NWA, the Major League of Professional Wrestling. See, I even remember that line. And also got the, you know, don't mean to digress some more, WATL Channel 36. And like I said, if you were a wrestling fan back then, you were spoiled. We're talking wrestling almost all day. Definitely wrestling from 6 a.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning. Totally hooked. Anyway, now let's get to the recap of Hills of the Carolinas. Speaking about Jim Crockett Promotions. But before I do get started, one more thing. Please hit the like button. Also, leave or drop a comment. Let me know what your memories of NWA Jim Crockett Promotions are. And also, as always, be a champ and hit that subscribe button. Alright, let me start off and talk about the beginnings of Jim Crockett Promotions. Jim Crockett Sr. founded Jim Crockett Promotions in 1935. He also promoted minor league baseball, hockey, and music concerts. He became a member of NWA in 1953. He used different name brands to basically for his different TV programs, like NWA Pro Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, NWA Worldwide or just Worldwide Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Championship Sports. Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling pretty much became the primary name brand of Jim Crockett Promotions. Hence, that's why it's called the Mid-Atlantic Territory. Big Jim, as some of the wrestlers call him, you watch the interviews, they'll call him Big Jim. He passed away in 1973. His son-in-law, John Ringley, ran the company for a while until Jim Crockett took, total control over it. I believe Ringley got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I think was doing a little misbehaving. Anyway, after that was done, Jim Crockett Jr. did control the day-to-day operations from 1973 to 1988, when he had to sell out to Jim Crockett. On the roundtable for this episode, we got David Crockett. David Crockett, of course, is the brother of Jim Crockett Jr., son of Jim Crockett Sr., also Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express, Hall of Famer, classic, probably the best white meat babyface in the history. Well, one of them at least, him, Ricky Steamboat, Tommy Rich, a few others. Baby Doll makes an appearance on this episode. They show different clips of other people like Nikita Koloff and Jim Cornette in this episode too, but like I said, this is the main four people who was discussing it. Last but not least is Double A himself, Arn Anderson, the enforcer of the Four Horsemen, the guy who gave basically the Four Horsemen that group's name, Four Horsemen. Legend has it that he gave an interview one time, and it was supposed to be an 8-man between him, Tully Blanchard, Ric Flair, Ole Anderson, against, I guess, Dusty Rhodes, Magnum, possibly the Road Warriors or something like that, or maybe Maynard Fernandez and Ron Garvin. Don't forget who, I don't remember who. But anyway, he just went on there and said, hey, when the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse comes to town, or something like that, then just like that, totally organic, the name stuck. They had fans dressed in suits, holding up four fingers like that. And still to this day, wrestling fans will, especially when I say Rick or Arn, Tully as well, they put four fingers. Sometimes when wrestling fans are drunk together, they'll stick up, especially if there's four of them standing there, they'll stick up the four fingers like that. Of course, if they're Steve Austin fans, or point that out, but I didn't do here. Anyway, they talked about how Vince McMahon was taking talent from the territories. Jim Crockett was scooping up talent himself at the time. On about the big, they would talk about the big money they were making at the time for Jim Crockett. He tells a story about him, Tully Blanchard, and Lex Luger go to the Mercedes dealership, and they, Luger bought a 420 SEL. Arn got a 300E. Tully bought him and his wife at the time a 300 as well. Yes, they were like rock stars at the time. They were all making that big money. So Baby Doll, she got first started in World Class Championship Wrestling. She started out as Gina Hernandez's bodyguard. She was a second generation performer herself. Also, in case you didn't know by now, Baby Doll is the former sister-in-law of Jake Roberts. She was married to Jake's brother Sam Houston. Anyway, her parents never smartened her up. She tells a funny story here where uh, she called the world class office, probably Fritz, and said, "Hey, you looking for a bodyguard for Gino Hernandez?" She had a little bit of a crush on him. Of course, I'm pretty sure a lot of women did had a little crush on Gino Hernandez. Anyway, she calls him up, and said, "Hey, I'm the one for the job." Uh, Fritz asks, "Are you smarting up?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, I'm pretty smart." Obviously, she didn't know what the smarten up meant. She her parents never did smarten her up. Which, if you ever watch some of these she interviews, especially second generation wrestlers, they'll tell you so their parents never did, or their dad, mom, or whoever, never smartened the kids up until they got into it. Uh, then they kind of smartened them up after they trained them a little bit. But she was never smartened up. They told when she got there, uh, they told her spots, and it's like, oh, this is how it works. So once that was over with, there's an angle where Tully Blanchard was looking nationwide for his perfect 10. And Tully Blanchard, he tells a funny story where women sent, pictures of themselves. Of course, they had to do it by mail at the time. Very scandalous pictures of themselves, wanting to be his perfect 10, want to have a shot be on TV, but Baby Doll wound up being the perfect 10. Dusty Rhodes, loved her spunk, loved her attitude, loved Baby Doll. So Tully loses a match, and she has to be Dusty's valet for 30 days. She'll want to, but she had to. Dusty Rhodes put a rope around her neck, which kind of dragged her along, and a fan grabbed a handful of her hair, and she went to swing at her and realized the woman who grabbed her hair is pregnant. But she said, luckily she barely tapped her and all that, so no lawsuits or anything like that. Um, and that's what I was talking about in the last episode. You know, if fans love the female performer, you better not lay a hand on her. But if she was a heel, yeah, let the babyface, give her a smack on the, behind, give her a spanking, kiss her, whatever. Things were a lot different with that back then. Of course, ECW, they cheer when Beulah got pile driven by Tommy Dreamer. So, with that being said, uh, the territory was basically babyfaces chasing the heel. Okay, Ric Flair was mostly the heel. He was the champion, and the babyface chased him. The psychology is, okay, you've got hero here, especially when they're being a traveling world champion. It was better to be the heel. That way they can get by with cheating or getting themselves disqualified, whatnot, and you know that would be better than having a babyface come in, have that maybe outshine their babyface top champion, or kill their heel. But no point of that. Definitely kind of smart thinking there. Uh, but yeah, they believe that Heat drew money, uh, and I do believe the old saying is heels get over on their feet, baby faces on their back. They talked about Jim Cornette and all the things that got thrown at him, which of course he was hated. Do love hearing stories about when he was in Mid South, and they say that's where Jim Cornette lost his mind right there. Uh, but anyway, they do discuss the angle where Jim Cornette hit Baby Doll with a tennis racket. They, hit her in the stomach, and they kind of told us that, hey, it's harsh. She might have injuries that will cause her not to be able to have babies and stuff like that, or children. Uh, and like I said, once if females love, this is when she was Dusty with Dusty at the time. She was a baby face, and if a woman get hit like that, that shit didn't fly back in the day, especially if the woman was loved. And of course, you don't hit a woman with a tennis racket. That was a little too much. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to, kick his ass. Uh, I know all of Maysville and Elementary wanted to, but we all got glad to see the James boys come in and get a little bit of revenge on them. And of course, the James boys were, Man MTA and Dusty Rhodes and Mass. Uh, I didn't notice at the time. I mean, this is a cool thing. You watch it back then, you didn't notice the little things that went on. But back then, I didn't notice that how quickly Cornette got out of the noose. But he explained that hey, he had his hand right there, and unfortunately, Baby Doll hit the gas pedal a little too quickly. But Cornette was able to snatch that rope off from around his neck, from around his head, and he lived because as quickly as she took off on that truck, uh, we won't be talking about Jim. We'll be talking about Jim Cornette won't be doing podcasting today, since he said that. Arn tells a story about the riot at the Omni in Atlanta. This was pretty much the birth of the Four Horsemen. Ric Flair was in a match with Nikita Koloff. After the match, he was getting beat up by the Russians, Nikita Koloff, Bush Khrushchev, and Ivan Koloff. Dusty came in, being the American Dream, baby. In the fave, if you will. Flair didn't appreciate it. Neither did Ole and Arn Anderson. They came in, they break Dusty's leg. Fans lost their shit. Scaling the cage. Arn said it had about 10 police officers that helped him get back to the back. And when they got to the back, it was all cut up and bruised and bloody. And that's not even been in the match. So back at that time, Starrcade, that was the premier event. They started in '83. Of course, '84, that's when WrestleMania, started too. So, but in Jim Crockett Promotions, Starrcade was their event. Basically, Starrcade was the equivalent of WrestleMania for those younger viewers out there. And it was, they call it the granddaddy of them all because that's what started it all. Also, a little more information about myself. This was the first first wrestling VHS. Take two. This was the first VHS wrestling tape I ever had. My dad bought it for my birthday for me. Anyway, Starrcade Starrcade '86 was the night. Skywalkers, Midnight Express versus Road Warriors. Fans were hoping to see, Road Warriors, just I guess they would kind of hope they throw them off a 30-foot, scaffold, or I forget how tall they had it. But when I kind of looking at it on tape, it's like, oh wow, that's pretty. I don't think it was 30 feet. It stood up pretty tall. Let's just put it that way. So, like I said, they had a clip of Jim Cornette telling the story of a way to see all of the Midnight Express get theirs. Not only is Bobby going to get thrown off, Dennis Contra gets thrown off. Also, Paul Ellering is going to chase Jim Cornette on top of the skypole. Going off the anyway. Paul Ellering would chase Jim Cornette up. Of course, on top of the scaffold. Scaffold is the Road Warriors. He, panics, and he kind of scooches over. And actually, his first RF video shooter interview, he talks about at the time he kind of practiced every night when he slept. Once his wife was asleep, or his wife at the time was asleep, he would kind of lean over the bed and kind of, grab a railing on the bed frame. So he tells that story. So it's supposed to be, he grabs it, gets on the rungs, kind of dangles there. Then he's going to drop. Big Bubba Roger's supposed to catch him and kind of fall over like cheerleaders. Unfortunately, as Jim Cornette would say, Big Bubba Rogers, Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor, rest in peace. Guess he got, he lost him in the lights or whatever. He had sunglasses on, didn't play baseball, whatever. Jim Cornette just right on the mat, tore up his ACL. Uh, yes, if you, I don't know if our video, I know High Spots probably, High Spots TV, or whatever it's called now. If you want to pay that $10 a month, or $10 for 1 month, and you know how streaming things go. Check it out. It's actually a pretty good interview. This is for Jim Cornette. Got crazy into politics too, but definitely hated this first up. But definitely a very good, entertaining show. So back in the complete mid or later part of 1984, Jim Crockett, Dusty Rhodes figured, hey, Ivan needs a nickname. So where they go? They go to Minnesota to find themselves another big dude. And this big dude was named Scott Simpson. He shaved his head and became Nikita Koloff. And all accounts, his own accounts, he did live that gimmick. I mean, he wouldn't speak English to nobody, learned a little bit of Russian, spoke broken English, after a while, out in public and in the locker room. Actually, I heard rumors, but they did, discuss it here. He actually auditioned for Rocky 4, played, what's his name, Drago, but he was jacked. I mean, he thought Dolph Lundgren was big. The kid Koloff, his rookie years, dude was like, obviously, Road Warrior, Barry Darso, Nor the Barbarian, just jacked to the gills. But yeah, he had a pretty good little career going on. Had the best of 7 series with Man MTA. Of course, he wound up cheating and winning the United States Championship. Gosh, that was disgraceful at the time. A Russian holding the United States Championship. Unfortunately, though, Man MTA would get in his car accident. Dusty decided to turn him babyface and had a pretty good babyface run. Then came back to WCW, through Lex Luger, left again, came back to WCW, was friends with Sting, and so on and so forth. I think he's doing preaching now, and I think he kind of gave the rub to a couple of guys who wrestle in the Southeast. They call themselves a co-op dynasty. Shoot, I forgot their names, but when it comes back to me, I'll discuss it later. Anyway, but yeah, the Nikita Koloff, big dude, and supposedly, I think I heard a story from him. Ivan Koloff, in his debut, said, "Hey, don't trip over the ropes," and he thinks he told him that because dude didn't have no training whatsoever. So possibly, if they say, "Hey, if he trips over the ropes, he's out of here." So obviously, he didn't trip over the ropes. Alright, they also discussed the infamous plane crash. Yes, the one that took place August 4th, 1975. On that plane was, of course, a pilot, Johnny Valentine, Mr. Wrestling, Bob Brugers, and David Crockett. And you gotta remember this, especially in '75. This is kayfabe era. Shouldn't be socialized as heels babyface. And of course, babyface was Mr. Wrestling on that flight, and he was feuding. They say he was feuding with Johnny Valentine at the time. Unfortunately, the pilot passed away, paralyzed Johnny Valentine. Bob Brugers, they didn't really say. It must have, ended his career. But so, if you looked at the paper at the time, you would see the names, David Crockett, promoter, so it wouldn't be uncommon for the promoter to be flying a jet with some wrestlers, heel or babyface, so no big deal there. Nobody's going to care. But the rest of them were heels, except for Mr. Wrestling. And apparently he, instead of giving his name Tim Woods or Miss because Tim Woods, you know, Mr. Wrestling would sometimes be unmasked and wrestle as Tim Woods. So he gave his real name of George Wooden to the authorities. Um, so when you read the paper, you see, you know, you see Jolly Valentine. Oh, and Ric Flair. You have to mention Ric Flair busted his back. Of course, this is the one that almost ended his career and life as well. But he winds up coming back, and he was, of course, a heel at the time. But he left the hospital, and 2 days later, wrestled on TV, put the mask on, and wrestled on TV. So yeah, it was like, okay, you know, didn't nobody think anything of it. They just, when I read the paper, they're like, oh, this is George Wooden guy. Definitely ain't, you know, Mr. Wrestling. Mr. Wrestling's just sitting there in the ring, and don't look like he's been in no plane crash whatsoever. So glad they was able to uh, give credit to Tim Woods, you know, for his. Cause I'm pretty sure he was banged up, pretty good. Last thing he wanted to do is go in the ring, take bumps, but he did it for the business to keep the magic alive. Okay, now this is a funny story. Uh, well, it wasn't funny for Ricky Morton, but anyway, so Ricky Morton's wife at the time, she was, you know, cleaning up as well, you know, get into religion, going to church. So she made him watch the 700 Club that had Tully Blanchard, who, of course, before, you know, uh, when he got out of business, became, uh, he found religion, became a preacher, and he did a lot of confessing on this episode of the 700 Club. Confessed all his sins, including snorting cocaine and banging rats with Ricky Morton. Like they said, there was no escaping that, no comebacks, no hot tags. He got the full wrath of his wife. So yeah, this is a pretty good episode of Tales from the Territories. Didn't really do any kind of bashing on anybody or anything like that. Just kind of told some stories. For me, you know, looking back on it, you know, due to overspending, overreaching, moving the office from Charlotte to Dallas, or moving Starcade from Greensboro, Atlanta to Chicago, depending on who you ask and depending on who tell the story, possibly just a combination of everything. Uh, Jim Crockett Promotions went into debt. Um, so Jim Crockett had to sell to Ted Turner, who was very faithful to wrestling. Uh, Wrestling was very good to WTBS, and it got a lot of eyes on his station, so he was definitely very faithful to wrestling. Uh, Unfortunately, I think a few things were probably mismanaged as well. Not this, you know, of course, you know, WCW became mismanaged, but that's a different subject at a different time. Some people blame Dusty Rhodes for the downfall of JCP, but in the High Spots Elbow Productions documentary, JCP, The Good Old Days, Jim Crockett Jr. really put the blame on himself. He's like, look, I'm the one that okayed this stuff. I was the president. I'm the one that said, okay, 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 and didn't really uh, pay attention where he needed to be paid attention to. For me, it was pretty sad to see the NWA go and everything be called WCW this. Instead of the NWA World Title, it was called the WCW World Title. Uh, WCW Television World Television Championship, tag, whatever. And of course, you know, then if it didn't really hit you then, the whole part where they, instead of just calling it World Championship Wrestling, the WTBS program changed to WCW Saturday Night. That beginning format was not that good. Wasn't a fan of it. But maybe one day we'll discuss all of WCW at one day. But like I said, this is what this is territory that got me hooked on wrestling. Um, Other than that, that does it for me in this episode of Classic Wrestling Reminiscing. Hope you folks enjoyed. Again, hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you thought about Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA. And like I said, be a champ, and be greatly appreciated if you hit that subscribe button. Until next time, you folks have a good one. Take it easy. Thank you for checking out my video. I really do appreciate it. And of course, this is the part where I ask you, if you're not a subscriber yet, to click on that subscribe button, leave a like, also share with friends. And if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter, X, it's at RRPATRPTV46. On Facebook, it's just Ronald Ray. And yes, I need to turn in my man card because I do have a TikTok. You can find me on TikTok at RP2Vision. As always, you have a good one and take it easy.